They called him worthless, a burden on the world, a shadow destined to fade into the forgotten corners of the city, their casual cruelty echoing the harsh verdict of a society that had already written him off. Their laughter, sharp and unforgiving, echoed louder than the sirens that wailed through his neighborhood, carving deep scars into his soul long before he truly understood the meaning of a broken dream, the devastating impact of low expectations. He was just a young black boy, small in stature but with eyes that held the weight of 1,000 untold stories. And yet, the world had already written his ending, sealed by the postcode of his birth. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly comprehend, was that every cruel word, every dismissive glance directed at a kid from the projects was merely fuel to a fire that would one day burn so brightly it would scorch the very memory of their doubt from the earth, transforming scorn into an unyielding ambition. What you are about to hear is not just a story of a kid from the projects. It is a symphony of defiance, a testament to the human spirit that refused to be silenced even when the world screamed for it to disappear, a narrative of transformation born from the deepest pain. Elias grew up where concrete stretched endlessly, a labyrinth of buildings that seemed to swallow the sun, leaving behind only the cold hard reality of survival, a truth etched into the very bricks of his existence, a constant reminder of his confined world. His world was the projects, a sprawling complex where dreams often went to die, suffocated by the daily grind and the constant whisper of impossibility that permeated the very air. He breathed a pervasive sense of being confined by invisible systemic chains. From his earliest memories, Elias was different. He wasn't loud or boisterous like the other kids who filled the courtyards with their shouts and games. Their boisterous energy a stark contrast to his own quiet, reflective demeanor. Instead, he possessed a quiet intensity, an observant gaze that took in every detail of his soul, processing the unspoken rules of a life that offered few handouts and even fewer second chances, a life that demanded resilience as a birthright from its young black occupant. He found solace not in the rough-and-tumble play, but in the faded pages of discarded books. He scavenged from bins their stories, transporting him far beyond the graffiti-covered walls that defined his physical existence, offering glimpses of worlds brimming with endless potential and hope. He devoured tales of adventure, innovation, and triumph, each word a tiny seed planted in the fertile ground of his yearning heart. Even as the stark contrast between those fantastical worlds and his own harsh reality gnawed at him, a constant ache of yearning for something more profound and dignified. He saw the struggle in his mother's tired eyes, felt the chill of their small, sparsely furnished apartment in winter, and knew with a certainty that settled deep in his bones that he wanted more, not just for himself, but for her, for the silent sacrifices she made every single day, her strength a quiet testament to enduring love. This profound desire for a different future, a life unburdened by the relentless fight for mere existence, became the guiding star of his young life, an internal compass pointing him towards an unknown horizon that he was determined to reach, no matter the cost, no matter the obstacle. The struggle was a constant companion, a heavy cloak that draped itself over every aspect of their lives, a pervasive shadow that touched every corner of their meager existence, making even the simplest joys feel like fleeting, undeserved luxuries. Food wasn't a given, it was a victory, a meal earned through his mother's tireless work at a factory on the other side of town, her hands calloused and worn from hours of repetitive motion, her body aching from the endless demands placed upon it. Sometimes the hunger pangs were so sharp they would keep Elias awake at night, a gnawing emptiness in his stomach, mirroring the hollowness in his chest when he heard the faint whispers from neighbors about their impending eviction, or the latest drug deal gone wrong just downstairs. The chilling sounds of despair, a constant unwelcome serenade. He saw his friends one by one, succumbing to the allure of quick money, trading their potential for fleeting power, drawn into a cycle that promised much but delivered only despair, their youthful spark extinguished by the harsh realities of the streets. Elias watched, his heart aching with a mixture of fear and sorrow, as bright young minds dimmed, replaced by hardened stares, and a resignation that spoke volumes about the crushing weight of their environment, a silent acknowledgement of dreams deferred and lives derailed by forces beyond their control. He carried the burden of knowing that simply by existing in the projects he was prejudged, dismissed by society before he even had a chance to speak. Branded by an address, he couldn't change a stereotype. He refused to embody a fact that burned with quiet injustice, especially as a young black man. Teachers at his underfunded school, overwhelmed and underpaid, often saw him as just another statistic, another lost cause, rarely recognizing the fierce intelligence simmering beneath his quiet demeanor, or the desperate longing for knowledge that consumed his every waking hour, a thirst for understanding that went far beyond the inadequate curriculum. He felt the sting of their low expectations, the subtle condescension in their voices when they spoke of potential. That felt more like a polite fantasy than a real possibility, a cruel joke disguised as empty encouragement. This constantly pervasive doubt, both from within and without, built a wall around him, a silent fortress of quiet determination, hardening his resolve even as it wounded his spirit, transforming pain into an unyielding purpose. But amidst the relentless shadows, a tiny crack of light appeared, a flickering beacon in the suffocating darkness that threatened to consume him whole, a subtle shift in the oppressive atmosphere that suddenly made breathing easier. It wasn't a grand gesture or a miraculous intervention, but something far more subtle, more profound, a whisper of possibility that resonated deep within his soul, a human connection where he expected only indifference. It began with Ms. Evelyn, the ancient, stern-faced librarian who presided over the small, dusty library a few blocks from the projects, a place most kids avoided, fearing its quiet solitude and the stern gaze of its guardian. Elias, however, drawn by an insatiable hunger for stories and a refuge from the chaos outside, found himself a regular fixture, disappearing between the towering shelves, losing himself in worlds far removed from his own, finding solace in the printed word and the sanctuary of silence. Miss Evelyn, initially dismissive, her eyes sharp and scrutinizing, eventually noticed the intensity in his gaze, the way the young black man handled each book with reverence, a silent understanding passing between them, a recognition of a shared, unspoken intellectual fire. One afternoon, as he was returning a tattered copy of a biography on a groundbreaking scientist, his young mind still buzzing with the wonders of discovery, she paused, her gaze piercing, yet softened by an unexpected warmth. "Elias," she said, her voice gravelly but unexpectedly kind, cutting through the silence of the library like a gentle ray of sun, "you're always reading about great minds. Do you ever think about becoming one yourself?" The question hung in the air, a spark in the overwhelming gloom, igniting a fragile, almost imperceptible hope within him, a realization that perhaps, just perhaps, his dreams weren't as outlandish as the world around him suggested. It was the first time an adult outside of his mother had spoken to him, not as a kid from the projects, not as a statistic, but as a mind, as a human being capable of more than just surviving, capable of intellectual greatness. That sparked, once a faint ember, began to grow into a small, steady flame, radiating a warmth that pushed back against the ever-present cold of his environment, fueled by Miss Evelyn's quiet encouragement and his own unyielding will. Elias started to see opportunities where he once saw only dead ends, perceiving pathways where before there were only walls, transforming obstacles into stepping stones. He spent every spare moment in the library, not just reading but devouring textbooks on mathematics and computer science subjects. That felt like unlocking a secret language to the universe, a hidden code for understanding the very fabric of existence. He taught himself to code using an old slow computer in the library's back corner, a relic of a bygone era, painstakingly piecing together information from outdated manuals and online forums. Driven by a relentless curiosity and an almost obsessive need to understand how things work to dismantle and rebuild concepts in his mind. He built simple programs, then more complex ones, each line of code a tiny victory against the odds, a tangible manifestation of his burgeoning intellect and unwavering resolve. His breakthroughs, though small in the grand scheme of the tech world, felt monumental to him, a tangible proof that his mind, a mind from the projects, could create, could innovate, could understand, could contribute something meaningful and lasting. Miss Evelyn, witnessing his relentless dedication and the fierce intelligence shining in his eyes, pulled strings, navigated bureaucratic hurdles, and found him a scholarship to a summer program at a prestigious university across town, a place that felt like another planet, a realm of privilege he had only glimpsed from afar. This wasn't just a program. It was a bridge, a narrow, precarious path, leading away from the concrete confines of his existence towards a future he had only dared to dream of. In the quiet solitude of his stolen books, for the first time, Elias wasn't just surviving. He was building, he was learning, he was soaring, even if just for a summer, tasting the intoxicating freedom of intellectual pursuit. He carried the weight of his mother's hopes, the silent pride of Ms. and the burning desire to prove to himself and to the world that a young black man from the projects could indeed rise above his origins, defying every expectation. The summer program was a revelation, a whirlwind of intellectual stimulation and cultural shock that simultaneously thrilled and humbled him, expanding his understanding of the world while keenly highlighting the vast differences between his life and theirs. Elias, initially overwhelmed by the sheer privilege that surrounded him, the casual displays of wealth and opportunity that were so foreign to his experience, quickly found his footing, his raw intellect, shining brightly amidst the polished brilliance of his peers. He was a sponge, absorbing every lecture, every discussion, every late-night coding session, his mind racing with possibilities, each new concept a doorway to an even grander understanding. He found a sense of belonging he'd never experienced, a community where his ideas were valued, where his insights were met with genuine interest, not dismissive glances or patronizing smiles. A true home for his restless mind. But even amidst this intoxicating new world, the shadows of his past lingered, an ever-present undercurrent beneath the glittering surface of his present. He felt the invisible lines that separated him from the others, the unspoken assumptions, the curious questions about his background, though often well-intentioned, felt like pointed reminders of where he came from, a subtle but constant barrier that he longed to shatter. He heard snippets of conversations about luxury vacations, private schools, and futures that seemed preordained, a stark contrast to his own reality of carefully budgeted bus fares and the constant worry about his mother back home, the quiet anxiety that always gnawed at him. Every phone call to his mom, every update on her struggles was a painful tug, pulling him back to the concrete realities of the projects, reminding him of the chasm he was trying to bridge, the immense responsibility resting on his young shoulders. He carried the weight of being an ambassador, not just for himself, but for every kid from his neighborhood who's told they weren't smart enough, not good enough, not enough. His success a beacon for their own unspoken hopes. This dual existence, straddling two vastly different worlds, created a profound emotional depth within him, a resilience forged in the fires of aspiration, and the quiet ache of longing for a life he knew he had to earn, not just for himself, but for all those who came before him and those who would follow, a deep silent vow. The summer ended abruptly, a cruel awakening from a beautiful, fragile dream. The vibrant hues of opportunity fading back into the monochrome reality he had temporarily escaped, the familiar grit of the projects replacing the pristine campus lawns. Elias returned to the projects, the stark reality of his old neighborhood, hitting him like a physical blow, the weight of the familiar despair, pressing down on him once more, threatening to extinguish the flame he had worked so hard to sustain. The vibrant energy of the university campus was replaced by the familiar drone of distant sirens, the smell of fresh-cut grass, by the lingering scent of stale garbage and forgotten promises, a sensory reminder of his hard-won temporary escape. He tried to hold on to the spark, to keep the momentum going, but the resources were scarce, the encouragement even scarcer, replaced by the pervasive skepticism he knew too well, the silent doubt in the eyes of his peers and neighbors. He applied to top universities, driven by a fierce determination, his essays pouring out his heart, his grades and accomplishments speaking volumes about his extraordinary potential, a shining beacon against the darkness of his origins, a plea for a chance. Rejection letters, one by one, began to pile up, each thin envelope a fresh stab to his burgeoning hope, the crisp paper a cruel reminder of doors slamming shut by those who only saw his address, not his ambition, a subtle form of systemic rejection. "We regret to inform you," Quotes became a cruel mantra, the polite dismissals, feeling like a personal indictment, a painful reaffirmation of every doubt he'd ever felt about his place in a world that seemed designed to exclude him, to keep him firmly in his box. But the most crushing blow, the one that truly tested the very foundations of his spirit, came not from an institution, but from a person, a girl named Isabella, who had represented his brightest hopes for integration into that privileged world. She was bright, beautiful, from a world of privilege, and they had shared a summer of intense intellectual connection, of whispered dreams under starlit campus skies, a connection he had mistakenly believed could bridge their vastly different worlds, a fragile, shared moment of pure potential. He had dared to hope, to dream of a future where their worlds could intertwine, where the projects and the privilege could somehow meet, where love and ambition could overcome societal barriers. He poured out his heart to her, confessing his feelings, his aspirations, his fears, all the raw vulnerability. He rarely showed, laying bare the true landscape of his soul, a young black man from the inner city, daring to ask for a place in her world. Her response, delivered with a gentle pity that felt colder than any anger, was a quiet, devastating affirmation of his deepest insecurity, a verdict that cut deeper than any rejection letter. "Elias," she said, her eyes unable to meet his, the simple gesture, a profound avoidance of the truth. You're amazing. Truly, but we're just too different. Our lives are on fundamentally separate tracks, and I can't live constantly looking over my shoulder." She paused, the silence stretching out like a chasm between them, making the weight of her words unbearable. "I need someone who understands my world, someone who's stable, predictable, someone who isn't always fighting to escape." The words hung in the air, a final, crushing verdict, each syllable laced with unintended venom. "You're not enough." It wasn't just a rejection of his affection, it was a rejection of his entire existence, a painful reminder of the chasm that still separated him from the world he desperately wanted to conquer, a brutal reminder that the invisible lines were still very much there, reinforced by the color of his skin and the location of his home. The echo of her words, "You're not enough," reverberated through his mind, louder than any siren, more painful than any hunger pang, settling deep in his core, threatening to extinguish the flame he had fought so hard to ignite, leaving him adrift in a sea of despair and bitter realization. That moment of utter devastation, that chilling echo of "you're not enough," didn't break Elias, it forged him, transforming the soft clay of his ambition into hardened steel, tempered by racial and social rejection. It became the turning point, the crucible in which his character was tempered into something unbreakable, a fierce, quiet resolve replacing his previous desperation. The pain of Isabella's words, the sting of every rejection letter, transformed from soul-crushing blows into a relentless, burning resolve, a powerful, self-sustaining fuel source. He decided, in that moment of profound despair, standing amidst the concrete ruins of his failed dreams, that he would never again allow anyone else to define his worth, his potential, or his destiny. If the established paths were closed to him, if the traditional gates of opportunity were locked by prejudice, he would carve his own, a path forged by his own hands, his own intellect, his own unwavering belief in himself, a defiant act of against a system designed to hold him back. He didn't just pick himself up, he rebuilt himself, piece by painful piece, stronger, smarter, more determined than ever before, his focus absolute and unyielding. He enrolled in a local community college, a place often dismissed by those in Isabella's world, but for Elias, a young black man without options, it became his new battleground, his launchpad, his sanctuary of self-improvement and focused work. He worked tirelessly, juggling his studies with 2 part-time jobs, one stocking shelves at a convenience store, the other cleaning offices late at night to help his mother and save every single penny, his body often aching but his mind sharp and focused. Sleep became a luxury, often replaced by endless hours in front of a borrowed laptop, coding, learning, building, fueled by cheap coffee and the memory of that stinging rejection, that refusal to see his value. He joined every tech club, volunteered for every hackathon, seeking out mentors who saw beyond his humble origins, who recognized the fire in his eyes and the brilliance in his ideas, hungry for knowledge and guidance. He faced skepticism, subtle prejudices, and constant exhaustion, but each obstacle only fueled his hunger, hardening his resolve and sharpening his focus. He transformed rejection into motivation, using every no as a stepping stone, every dismissive glance as an impetus to work harder, smarter, with an intensity that bordered on obsession, an unrelenting focus on his goals. He developed an app idea born from his own painful experiences and the project's a platform to connect underserved communities with vital resources from job training to educational opportunities, a solution to a problem. He lived every day turning his personal plight into universal power. It wasn't just code. It was a solution, a bridge, a way to lift others up, just as Miss Evelyn had lifted him, transforming his personal pain into a powerful, scalable mission. He honed his pitch, practiced his delivery, learning not just the language of technology, but the language of business, of vision, of conviction, mastering the necessary tools for his ascent. He carried the weight of his past, not as a burden, but as a reminder of where he came from, and more importantly, where he was going, a powerful anchor in the storms of self-doubt. He was no longer just a kid from the projects. He was a force, an unstoppable current of ambition and innovation, ready to reshape his world and prove to all those who doubted him that he was, in fact, more than enough, a sleeping giant awakened by the sting of rejection. The day arrived, a confluence of years of struggle, sacrifice, and an unshakable belief in himself, the ultimate test of his self-made trajectory. Elias stood on a brightly lit stage, the air thick with anticipation, the hum of hundreds of industry investors and tech moguls filling the grand auditorium, a dazzling, intimidating display of concentrated power and wealth. He was at a prestigious tech startup competition, the kind that could make or break a career, the kind that was supposed to be reserved for graduates of elite universities, for those born into networks of privilege and established success. He looked out at the sea of expectant critical faces, a flash of doubt sharp and unwelcome, trying to pierce his resolve. The old anxieties whispering their insidious lies, questioning if a young black man from the projects truly belonged here. He remembered the cold dismissal in Isabella's eyes, the patronizing tones of those who told him his dreams were too big, too unrealistic for someone like him, the echoes of that soul-crushing phrase, "You're not enough." He felt the phantom pangs of hunger from his childhood, the ache in his mother's tired hands, the silent burden of every kid in the projects who desperately needed a champion, a visible success story to inspire them. But then, as he took a deep breath, a different image surfaced, overpowering the doubt. Miss Evelyn's kind eyes, his mother's hopeful smile, the faces of his community relying on him, transforming his nervousness into powerful purpose. He wasn't just pitching an app, he was pitching a future, a possibility for millions, a testament to the idea that genius can bloom anywhere. That opportunity should not be limited by birth. He began to speak, his voice, initially a little shaky, soon gaining strength, filling the room with a passion that was undeniable, a clear, resonating conviction, born from lived experience. He articulated his vision with eloquence and precision, showcasing not just the innovative technology, but the heart, the empathy, the personal experience that fueled every line of code, every design decision. He spoke of bridging divides, of empowering the voiceless, of transforming lives from the ground up, using his own journey as the ultimate proof of concept for his software's efficacy. The room, initially murmuring with polite, skeptical interest, gradually fell silent, captivated by his story, his conviction, his undeniable brilliance, the sheer force of his presentation. A hush descended, broken only by the sharp clicks of cameras and the soft rustle of notes being taken, the sound of minds being changed in real time. When he finished, a moment of profound, absolute silence hung in the air, a testament to the raw power of his presentation, a pause before the world finally acknowledged his brilliance. Then, slowly at first, a single person began to clap, then another, until the entire auditorium erupted in a thunderous, overwhelming ovation, a sound that vibrated through his very bones, washing away years of doubt and scorn, a powerful wave of validation. He stood there, soaking in the applause, the weight of his past lifting, replaced by the exhilarating lightness of triumph, a quiet smile of profound satisfaction gracing his lips. This wasn't just an applause, it was an affirmation, a recognition, a validation of everything he had fought for, everything he had believed in, against all odds, the universal acceptance of his self-worth. a victory for every young black person who had been told they did not belong. The thunderous applause on that stage was not merely the end of a presentation. It was the explosive beginning of Elias's new world, a world he had meticulously crafted with his own unwavering spirit. Brick by hard-won technological brick, offers poured in, not just investment, but partnerships, mentorships, opportunities to scale his vision beyond anything he had ever dared to imagine, turning his dream into a global enterprise. His app, a beacon of hope born from his own experiences in the projects, became a groundbreaking success, lauded not only for its technological innovation, but for its profound social impact, genuinely connecting underserved communities with vital resources and pathways to success, a true force for good. Elias, the young black man from the projects, was no longer just surviving, he was thriving. His company valued in the millions. His name synonymous with purposeful innovation, a symbol of self-made success. He moved his mother out of their small, cramped apartment in the projects into a beautiful, sunlit home, seeing the joyous tears in her eyes, a moment more precious than any business deal. A silent testament to every sacrifice she had made, his first and most important victory. He established foundations, poured resources back into his old neighborhood, creating tech hubs, educational programs, and mentorship initiatives, ensuring that other kids from the projects would have the opportunities he once had to fight so desperately for, creating a lasting legacy that went beyond himself. He became a sought-after speaker, a voice of inspiration, sharing his story with packed auditoriums across the globe. His quiet intensity now radiating with an undeniable power and wisdom. A true leader. He spoke not just of technology, but of resilience, of empathy, of the boundless potential hidden in every individual, regardless of their zip code, using his platform to advocate for systemic change. The boy who was once dismissed, scorned, and told he wasn't enough was now a symbol of what was possible, a living, breathing testament to the power of self-belief against overwhelming odds. Years passed, and Elias's impact rippled far beyond the tech world, touching lives across continents, his success story becoming an industry legend. He stood on another stage, this time receiving a humanitarian award, a recognition of his profound commitment to social change, a world away from the dusty library where his journey truly began. As he looked out at the faces, a familiar one caught his eye, sitting quietly in the back row, a ghost from a past that once felt so painful, Isabella. She had sought him out, her expression a complex mixture of regret and admiration, her once pitying gaze now filled with an undeniable respect for the man he had become, the powerful figure she once deemed too unstable. He offered a polite nod, a silent acknowledgement of the path they had both traveled, a path that had diverged so sharply only to briefly intersect again, a quiet closure on that painful chapter. He held no bitterness, no desire for petty triumph, only a quiet, profound understanding that their definition of enough had been vastly different, and his had proven to be far grander than anyone, including her, could have imagined. A truly universal victory. His story became a universal anthem, a powerful reminder that true worth is never dictated by the circumstances of one's birth, the size of one's bank account, or the opinions of those who cannot see beyond their own limited perspectives. It is found in the courage to dream when the world tells you to be realistic, the resilience to rise when you are knocked down, and the unwavering belief in your own unique and boundless potential. Elias, the quiet young black boy who devoured books in a dusty library, the kid from the projects who faced down doubt and rejection, became a living testament to the truth that every single one of us possesses an inherent fire, a unique genius waiting to be unleashed. And that fire, once ignited, has the power not only to transform our own lives, but to cast a warm, hopeful glow on the entire world, reminding us all that we are indeed always enough and capable of achieving the impossible, if only we dare to believe. His legacy was not just in the millions he earned, but in the millions of lives he inspired, whispering across the globe, "Your story is just beginning, and you, too, are more than enough."